I'm going to start the event today on something that I read recently, and some of you may have read as well, called the Stockdale Paradox. And I'm just going to read a few lines from that. It says, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever that might be." And that was, I think, just quite useful for me, resonated with me in the difficult times that we are. The reason we're all come together today is to celebrate Islam. Last month, the November month, was the Islamophobia Awareness Month. But I think to understand perhaps the phobia first, we need to understand Islam a little bit more. And that's why we've invited panelists to this program. And also we said, when we did the Black History Month last month, that we would like to keep up this tradition, to get to just know each other a bit better. We have diversity in our profession, we have diversity in our population, but do we really know each other a little bit more, how we spend our personal lives, how our personal lives spills over into our professional lives. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nadiah, who is a trainee in general practice and has very kindly offered to do the quiz with us. I would really request all of you to take part. So over to you, Nadiah. Do you want to just introduce yourself in the meantime while James is doing that, and
yeah,
as to where you are, what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm one of the GP trainee currently on my second year. Well, officially will be ST3 next tomorrow, which is a changeover. And I work with Dr. Malik in one of the surgery in Nottingham. And Dr. Malik is one of the panel as well today. So he introduced me to the lovely Sonali for us to do this together. So I've decided to do a bit of Q&A sessions. I'm not pro myself, so if there's any questions that I couldn't answer, we'll open it to the floor to answer them to someone who is more familiar with the questions that I can't answer. So the first question is, what is Islamophobia? Because we're doing Islamic awareness, it's best to just familiarize ourselves with the definition. Is it a noun, dislike or prejudice against Islam, type of racism that target expression of Muslimness, or is it all of the above? So there's a time as well. So 9 of us got it right. It is all of the above. It's interesting because the second one is a direct definition from the Oxford Dictionary. And the third one is actually a definition from an Islamic website where generally all the Muslims in the UK actually agreed with regards to the definition itself. And when they say expression of Muslimness, it means that a woman who is wearing a scarf or a perceived Muslimness. Sometimes the Sikh people are actually targeted as well because the act of wearing turban itself is considered as the act of a perceived Muslimness. And next. Right. Yep. So the second one, what is hijab? The second one is the right answer because the first one is very non-specific, and hijab is basically a direct translation for headscarf covering the head, hair, and neck. Niqab and burqa is basically a different form of covering, which includes covering of the face, where hijab itself doesn't include the covering of the face. So Islam is the blank religion in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Largest, second, third, fourth. Is a second correct? So this is based on the census in 2011, but the national statistics of UK actually did it more recently, and the numbers is still the same, and Islam is still the second largest religion in the UK. So under the British Indian Army, a significant number of Muslims fought for the United Kingdom in the First, Second, both World War, or none of the above? Is actually both. 13 of us got that right, which is good. Some of them who fought in the war actually get the Victoria Cross, which is the highest rank of the honorary, if I'm not mistaken. And Dr. Malik, actually great grandfather, I believe, fought in one of the World War as well. He probably will be able to give you a bit of brief history with regards to that, if any one of you are interested. Who is a pioneer in the field of psychosomatic medicine? The tips is this. This is quite a popular guy. Hopefully, everyone get it right.
Have I missed something?
Yay! So most of you got it right. It is Ibn Sina, or more commonly known as Avicenna. The second guy is actually the first guy who wrote a book on medical ethics. Third one is obviously our Prime Minister, the Malaysian Prime Minister. He's quite interesting because he's the 4th and the 7th Prime Minister of Malaysia. And the last one, he actually wrote a medical book after Avicenna, which is more practical side of things, but it's equivalent to the Ibn Sina's book. What is the name of Britain's first mosque? Oh, it's actually number 2. I put 2 of the London mosques there just to confuse, because usually psychologically people would think, oh, there's 2 in London, it's probably one or the other. But actually it's Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking. It is also well known for the architectural side of things. So if anyone is interested in architectural side of things, can probably give a visit. How many total numbers of prayers does Muslim perform in a day? Yay. Good, 5. So I don't really need to explain this then. Yeah, that's right. It's 5 in a day. So what is Ramadan, the beginning of the 9th month? Derived from an Arabic word, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Ramad. Right, so 10 of us got it right. So it's all of the above. With regards to fasting in Ramadan, because Ramadan itself is a 9th month of the Muslim calendar, it can fall at any time during the solar month, which is the solar calendar, which is the calendar that we use on a day-to-day basis. So this time around, it actually fall in summer. So the hours in terms of how it works, we fast from food and also water, and it's just from dawn to dusk. So it depends on when it falls. If it is in summer, the hours is obviously a bit longer than if it falls in winter. How many Eids are there each year? So there is 1, 2, 3, or depends on the year. It is basically a celebration that the Muslim does every year, and there are certain number of Eids that we celebrate every year. 2, good. So generally it's 2, which is Eid al-Fitr, which is the celebration that we do after the month of fasting, so it's just after Ramadan. And then the second one is about 2+ months after, which is celebrated at the end of each Muslim calendar year. Sometimes it can be 3. The reason being because the Muslim calendar is based on the lunar calendar. So every year our sort of a total number of days is about 11 days less than the solar calendar, which is the one that we usually use. So because of that, every 30 years, we are a year ahead, kind of. So every 30 years, you'll have Ramadan at the start of the year in January and at the end of the year in December. So that's every 30 years. So we're due to have 2 Ramadan or 2 fasting months into 2030, soon in 10 years. Right, so let's see who's the winner. It is, so we've added the points now. Aiysha. Good.
Brilliant.
I can't see.
No. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Nadiah. That was really helpful, and thank you for doing that. And we're going to pick up some questions from that. So brilliant. So I'm just going to now move to the Q&A to the panelists. And as I said, if the panelists can introduce themselves as we go along. So Dr. Malik, if I can bring you in for the first question, if that's okay. And
yeah, sure.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your journey, and also if you can share with us what do Eid celebrations look like at home?
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me this evening. So I'm Irfan Malik. I work as a GP Elmswood Surgery in Sherwood. So Nottingham is my home city. I was born and brought up in Nottingham. And then moved away to qualify in Birmingham, and then came back. and have been lucky enough to work as a partner in Sherwood for nearly 25 years. So that the practice, I think it's got a history of nearly 100 years, but I was the first ethnic minorities doctor GP there. So it was a bit of a culture shock for some of the patients and the population at that time in the 90s. And over the years now, for my sins, I'm senior partner. We have 9,000 patients, 6 partners and 3 registrars, and Nadiah here is one of our registrars. I'm also a member of Ahmadiyya Muslim community. I help run a large mosque, the Bethel Hafiz Mosque in Sneinton, and that's been going for about 3 years. Before we were based in a local community centre, and I do a lot of outreach work from the mosque, so a lot of interfaith work. We do weekly food banks even during the lockdown period for Salvation Army, and prior to the COVID problems, the lockdown, we used to have a lot of functions introducing people to have a look around our mosque in open days, the opening of the fasts during Ramzan in the evening, and many charity events as well. So that was part of my role, is to engage with local community and people of any faith and no faith really, to come and meet Muslims and also have a look and see what a mosque is like as well. And I work also with the local councils. We are approved as a school visit site at the mosque as well. So that's a little bit of background about me. And this year, the 2 Eids that we had were more quiet than they usually are, but it was actually good because I could spend more time at home with my immediate family and reflect more. So it was different, and some of the community members found that hard, but it was understandable in the circumstances that we had those restrictions.
Thanks so much, Irfan. And yes, I've had the privilege to visit the mosque as well, and you know, all the community services that you do. I know you were specifically at one occasion, you were out with kind of cleaning the streets, I think, and that was again organized, I think, through the mosque and the council, as I understood. But you do have a particular interest, isn't it, Irfan? And tell us a bit more about that, if you may, please.
So one of my hobbies over the last 6 years was looking into the Indian subcontinent contribution, especially in World War I. And over time, that hobby has grown. And now I travel up and down the country speaking on that. And also I have a traveling military museum as well, which I also display along with my talks. And it's just showing, for example, in World War I, 1.5 million people from the Indian subcontinent joined, including a great number of Sikhs, Hindus, and Muslims as well. So it's just giving that positive narrative that people of all religion helped in both of the world wars. And we were there too, and we have a very strong shared history. And that's what links us into to British history as well. And my parents migrated to England in the early 60s, and my great-grandfathers, as Nadiah said, were in World War I, and my grandfathers were both in the Burma campaign in World War II. So my parents had a link with Britain, and that's probably one of the reasons that they came over in the early 60s.
Yes, and I would certainly recommend that whenever next you do, and whenever all this lockdown finishes, because I know you do lots of events at the mosque displaying some of those pictures and all the charity work that you do. So I would certainly highly recommend people to visit that mosque, just to increase awareness and education and all the brilliant work that you're doing. Thanks, Irfan. That was really helpful. Rafia, if I know you're there, so Rafia, why don't you come in and tell us a little bit more about your story? It's slightly different, and you bring quite an interesting lens of the community pharmacy world, and now in the primary care networks. So please do introduce yourself, Rafia, and tell us a little bit more about yourself, your journey, and your story.
Hi everyone, my name is Rafia. I don't know how I can follow on from Dr. Malik. That's pretty good. Pretty good, a lot of things that he's got going on there. So I've recently joined as a PCN pharmacist over at the university sites in Nottingham. And before that, I was working in an independent community pharmacy, which was in Bulwell. I worked there for quite a number of years. It was quite different to what I've worked at before. I've locumed before throughout Derby and throughout Nottingham. But Bulwell in particular is a very different demographic. I'm sure you're aware because it's kind of not too far from us. It was just very difficult in the sense that there wasn't a lot of multicultural. There wasn't any multicultural actually people there. There's no ethnic minorities, so that was quite tricky, and they were quite surprised to see me there particularly. But yeah, you can ask me what you would like to know.
So tell us what your experience has been like, Rafia, in terms of the positives or the hurdles that you may have faced being a Muslim in the NHS or even in the community pharmacy.
To be honest with you, I've been quite lucky in the sense that I haven't had too many hurdles. It was quite difficult because I was the manager of the branch in Bulwell. It was quite easy to kind of make staff aware of my religion and if I was fasting or if I needed to take 5 minutes away to pray. So that was quite easy. It was a bit more difficult to do that when I was locuming because obviously as a community pharmacist, you need to be kind of on the shop floor at all times, essentially. If you're not on the shop floor, then kind of literally nothing happens. So that was quite difficult. And it could in some senses make some pharmacy managers who we were working with a little bit hesitant and a little bit unsure, only because they didn't know, and when you did explain to them, they still didn't kind of fully understand. So that was a little bit tricky. Overall, it's been quite a positive experience. I haven't had anything which has put me off pharmacy or locuming. So overall, it was a positive experience. I think it's just about education and making people aware.
Yeah, and there is a huge, I mean, in terms of people from diverse ethnicities, if I'm not mistaken, within the pharmacy or pharmacists, I think it's about 40% or 40 to 44%, as I understand, people from diverse ethnicities. However, the leadership, again, isn't quite reflective of, the majority of the workforce, at least in pharmacists, as I'm understanding. And I think that happens perhaps in all the different areas as well, whether that's, to some extent, general practitioners, nurses, and otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. But do you think there's any reason why there is so the population, we say about 19 to 20% is from the ethnically diverse, within UK, from the ethnically diverse population. Why such a high percentage within pharmacists? Is it, as in, there must be more, is there more acceptance within the culture, or is it just that, what would be your take on it?
You mean, why do you feel that there's more ethnic minority in pharmacy?
Yeah.
Probably because it's seen as quite I'd like to say safe profession, especially when I was studying, when I was deciding what to do at university. It was very much you're the Asian girl, it's nice 9 to 5, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids. So that was at the forefront mostly. And you'll find that a lot of not just Muslim, but a lot of Asian girls in general went into pharmacy because that was what they were thinking. That's what their family had told them. With regards to sorry, just 1 second.
Hello.
With regards to I think with doing medicine or things like that, it's a lot more nights. It's a lot more I knew he was going to do this as soon as I was talking.
Oh no, please take your time. Not a problem at all.
I think there's a lot more nights. It's a little bit more difficult, and I think parents just want the best for their kids, obviously, and I think that was mainly the reason for it, why there is such a huge number. And I think the number of possibly, I mean, I don't know, possibly women probably more so than men, but I think that's the reason, really.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rafia, and yeah, please do take your time with them. That's absolutely
I'm so sorry.
No, it's completely fine. So, and thanks for that. So, Robana, if I can bring you in, Robana, and Robana is a well-known face, certainly in Nottingham. So, tell us a little bit more about your experience, Robana, as to how does faith influence your personal and professional life? If you want to talk about that, if you feel comfortable talking about that.
Yeah, thanks, Sonali. So hello, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name's Robana Hussain-Mills. Leeds is my home city, for those that don't know. However, my home is in sunny Mansfield, which is lovely at the moment, and I work in Nottingham City predominantly, and I'm a nurse. So, my faith personally. So I'm married to a non-Muslim, I can say that, which at first didn't go down very well with my family. And I think it was more fear of what was different, but they've come round now, which is good. Faith is quite a tricky one. I think when I was growing up, it was more embedded in culture. Your faith was embedded in whatever culture you came from. So we didn't have a strict upbringing. We went to the mosque. I remember being, as a young child, not fully understanding why we were at the mosque. We were being taught Arabic, and I couldn't understand it. I didn't understand what I was reading. So why was I being, forced to go to a mosque? But it was just culturally accepted. And then as I got older and started voicing my opinions, they agreed to get me one that was in English, which made a huge difference, actually, a huge difference, which sort of encouraged me to learn more. And my children as well. So this has been quite a tricky situation for them to try and get their heads around. So like Dr. Malik was saying, we have both my grandparents fought in the war, and it's about bringing those two cultures together and having that faith embedded. So we do celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Eid, and we celebrate Christmas as well. We make our Christmas every year on Remembrance Sunday. It's just embedding those two cultures. The children understand, why we're doing things, why we're Muslims, about the faith, why it's important, being kind to each other. And sort of, I think reflecting back, by marrying somebody that was non-Muslim, which goes against a lot of people's beliefs, I really wanted to hold on to this. I must not drink, and I don't drink. All my meat should be halal. And I would be, when I moved to Mansfield, I was doing an hour and a half round trip to get halal meat. I was that sort of stuck to. I wanted to cling on to that sort of aspect of it. And I remember saying this to my mum after my first child was born, taking her in the car seat to Nottingham to bring her back, and she just looked at me as though I was nuts. She was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you depriving yourself?" And I said, "No, the meat has to be halal, and I have to teach them." So, and in the end, the people at the meat shop was really kind and would deliver the meat for me. So they knew I came a long way. I said, "No, don't do that. We'll deliver it for you." So it does have challenges, but it's fun, and you learn more with children. I think children ask, questions. So, why do we sacrifice an animal on Big Eid? And then it's just going through, and then it's sort of aligning that to the Bible almost, and saying, actually, this is already there, and for them to understand that and have that sort of narrative around it. I think we're all becoming vegetarians at the moment. The way meat is, if I'm completely honest. But regarding my professional life, again, I've been fairly lucky. I remember when I first said I was going to be a nurse, and family were really supportive. My parents were really supportive. And then I remember an uncle coming, and he was quite strict and he was very religious, and was saying what I was going to be. And he sat there and he said, "But you'll be working with men." And my mouth dropped open. I was like, "What? did he really say that? And we were all speechless. I mean, you know, everybody was just silent. I couldn't believe what was coming out of his mouth. So so we just got up and we just sort of left. And I thought that, you know, why would you say that? So that's why I think sometimes it's really hard for Muslim women to enter nursing, because you're seen as that personal care for patients. But actually, when I joined nursing, I found it really, I still do find it really interesting. I get to meet people from different faiths. We can have a chat about religion, not forcing it, but sort of understanding the differences to patients, because they want to know where you're from. They want to know what you do. Because if you say that you're a Muslim, they think you're a terrorist. I mean, it's two words that go together for a lot of people, and they're a bit surprised that you're caring for them. But then after a while, it's building trust and changing attitudes and having conversations with people, and them knowing that you're actually just human, just like them. You know, you do the same things as they do. You know, you watch the same TV programs, etc. So. And same for my colleagues as well. You know, they're interested, but they sometimes say, "Oh, I don't want to offend you." But you know, are you fasting today? And you know, and generally I would say I'm not fasting. And why aren't you fasting? And it's just giving people that reassurance that they can ask those questions without feeling like they're offending me or upsetting me. So I think that would be it. I could write a book, Sonali, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, we look forward to that, Robana, with you writing a book, because every time I do listen to your stories, there's something new that I learn. So I am going to come back to you with another question, but there's something that you just picked up with that you said there, and I'm going to bring Aiysha in if I can, and Aiysha, do introduce yourself. With regards to this role that media plays in, you know, in the image of Muslims in the community, I think something that Robana said there as to, you know, it's immediately, why do people think about terrorism? So what role do you think, well, one, what role does media play in improving the image for the Muslim community? And have you seen that as an impact within your daily life, just getting out and about? Aiysha?
Hi, so my name's Aiysha. I'm a PCN pharmacist in Nottingham West. I work for PICS. Like Dr. Malik, I'm Nottingham born and raised. I went to the University of Nottingham for my pharmacy degree and did my pre-registration up north, and then have been qualified for a year and recently came back home to Nottingham. That's a very, very good question, because me and Sonali have had lots of conversations on this topic. Personally speaking, I feel the media doesn't portray Islam or Muslims in a positive light. I think we're lucky that we're in a generation where social media is at the forefront, and people will go to social media to get their version of the local newspaper now. And social media has allowed this platform where you have younger Muslims, you'll have Muslims who've been experienced in healthcare professions like Dr. Malik, and people can reach out to them and get to know what Islam is. They'll ask a question about what Ramadan is, what Eid is. Whereas the media, for example, during COVID, they always try to show Islam and Muslims in a negative way. An example is like when we had the first lockdown and some of the mosques were allowed to reopen, you had lots of images on newspapers where they took angles of the car parks of mosques that showed all the Muslims praying very closely together. And it resulted in the mosques having to release their videos from their CCTV cameras that actually no, they were all spaced out. There was the correct amount of people who were allowed to be there, and they had facilities to wash your hands, and everybody had a mask on. But the media didn't play it that way. And I know the media does this with a lot of things and a lot of people, but I've personally, growing up from being a child to even now, I've not seen the media try to put Muslims out there in a positive way, or try to spin a positive story on maybe on Islam and Muslims, but it'll be spun in such a negative manner.
Yeah, that's true. And it can both be a good place and a bad place, isn't it, in social media, as we've come across that, you know, when trying to elevate those voices, sometimes it can absolutely be in a good way. And I know Irfan has kind of, used this, whether it's social media or traditional media channels, to be able to bring the good out, to be able to bring those voices out which portray, whether that's Islam, Muslim community, or for that matter, contributions to the world war, so that people really start to get an impression and a better understanding of that as well. Irfan, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so just agreeing what is said, that mainstream media can sort of demonize Muslims, but there are other ways, as you say, to have a positive impact on the media and in the media, and social media is one way. And that's why I have to be very careful what I write on Twitter, because it'll get published somewhere. So that can be used as a positive way of getting information out there.
Thanks for that, Irfan. I should just capture a little bit and learn a little bit more from you, because of course you've, we're just going to come to questions in a bit. Is that okay? Okay. So Aiysha, just exploring that a little bit with you, tell us about your experience in Leeds, because again, you and I have spoken a lot about where Leeds have been perhaps in that integration of various diverse communities. And you think that it's probably a bit more work to do in Nottingham.
I think, as everywhere, things need development. With Leeds, I found within Leeds itself, between primary and secondary care, there's a big difference in how far they've gone. So looking at it from a primary care perspective in Leeds, they're really ahead of the game. They've got BME groups, they've got equality and diversity groups, and they've been at the forefront of making sure everybody's included. Now, before even COVID began, they were making sure the correct risk assessments were in place for BME people, and they were raising the questions why there are not more senior BME people in leadership positions. Now, we've mentioned about pharmacy, but that's actually most of healthcare is people from an ethnic background, if we really look at it. When you look at these leadership positions, it's very uncommon to see someone like you. And Leeds were very at the forefront of asking this. Now, Tim Riley's the chief exec of the NHS Leeds, and he has really been an ally, and same with Jim Barwick for Leeds GP Conved, and they've gone forward and they've been questioning why these issues are there. And I think you can have people from a BME background raise these questions, but with Leeds, you've had allyship together and they've all gone forward. And that's why it's working so well in Leeds. When I came back to Nottingham, being from Nottingham, going to the University of Nottingham, I didn't really think we'd have much of a BAME-related or an EDI sort of group or a network going on here. And then I saw the work that Sonali and co are doing, and it's refreshing that actually it's 2020, we're finally seeing something in Nottingham, being from the younger generation, going to Nottingham University, growing up in Nottingham. It's so nice to see the development, and actually in a few years' time, we may see more people like us in these senior positions or more confident to speak about their experiences and be more key in healthcare, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would certainly, I'll bring in Robana here, because I know she's been doing a lot of work in setting up Black, Asian and ethnic minority groups and networks within the CCG. But before we come to that, Robana, tell me, because I know that's amazing what you've been doing. I know not just at the local level, but even at the national level. But tell us if, of any challenges that you've had while kind of climbing that ladder of leadership, and what you would like to share with us, and then how that has absolutely propelled you on and given you the courage to keep moving forward.
Oh, Sonali, right. I'll try and think how to answer that in a clear way. I think how I've got where I have got is partly, I will say, through skill. I'd like to say that, but actually the support of others. And it's not necessarily been my close group of people that I work with. It's been about those really key relationships. So that relationship building started probably when I started general practice 16, 17 years ago. Just chatting to people, just being nice, just being friendly. And so, and that built through the City CCG. And we did some amazing work there for nurses, which I was really proud of. And those nurses have come on leaps and bounds. But it has been challenging. I think, and you know, whether it's coming from a Muslim perspective or from a BME perspective, there are people that you hear snippets of conversations of, who does she think she is? And it's that sort of that gets fed back. Who does she think she is? Why is she being such a hothead? And I remember that advice being given to me once, from a super mentor, and they said, you can't be a hothead, but GPs can. And I'll never forget that, because I was like, why is it okay for one group of professionals to be able to challenge and question and not another? But with everything it comes with challenging. I think the positives have been networking, having conversations with different people to understand and listen and learn, but then also not being afraid to have your voice and to try and bring your whole self to work, your true self to work. And that's something that's really tricky to do, because I think, well, I have done for a long time, is just put a mask on, smile, everything's brilliant, and you know, thinking today is going to be different. But it is tricky. And I think speaking to sort of other colleagues that are from a BME background and a Muslim background as well, I think when they find conflict at work, they just leave, and they go to another organisation or they go somewhere else because they think life is too short. But what I found is, if you stay around and you talk to those people, you not only educate them, but it makes you feel like you've got some worth as well, because therefore they're understanding where you're coming from, but you're also learning together as well, whether that, you know, from a BME perspective with the network, which is brilliant and running really well. And I think Stuart's on this webinar, this chat today, who's our champion. So it's not necessarily, Stuart's not from a BME background, or from, you know, he's white, and I was going to say middle aged, but he's not. He's in his early 20s. He's listening. But again, it's about building those relationships, not just with your own ethnicity, your own background. You need to go out and you need to learn, and you need to spread that word that actually, if you're Muslim or if you're from a BME background, actually you're okay and you are normal, you know. I think hopefully that will answer your question.
Thanks. No, thanks, Robana. That was Stuart is saying he's actually nearing old age. So, well, Nadiah, can I bring you in to ask you a question? And I know you're early on in your journey, but we're wanting to learn from everyone, from wherever they are in that spectrum. And so, tell me, during during the time of training, during the time of education, medical school, do you find these places are culturally sensitive, and how can we all improve to be a bit more culturally sensitive?
Thanks, Sonali. I think because I've been brought up with a background with a mixed family. My mom was a Buddhist, converted to Muslim. My dad was Muslim. My aunt was a Christian. The husband was a Hindu. So we are culturally as a family. So we have everyone in the family anyway. So at any point of time throughout my life, even coming to UK, I don't feel odd or out of the ordinary. So I've always been able to mix up with people. So I'm lucky in that sense, in the way that I've been brought up from different, sort of culturally different background anyway. When I was in uni, because I studied in University of Nottingham, graduated from there, worked a year in Chesterfield and then back in Nottingham until now. I've always felt that it's always been welcoming. We have a Malaysian Nottingham Society anyway at the time when I first started in uni, and that was a good society because we have a few thousands of people in the group itself, and that includes all the family members from Malaysia who has been here for a while. So at the start, the first year, it's a very good support to have, and then throughout the year itself, I didn't feel isolated or that people are less sensitive with regards to how I am. And I've always felt welcome in a way that in lectures, if I wanted to ask questions with the lecturers or have a discussion with my tutor, it's always been pretty easy. The only thing that I've got comment on is usually they'll say, oh, you've got a pretty good English, or where are you from? Why do you look like Chinese? Although I'm from Malaysia, you're from China, kind of thing. So it's very sort of, I look at it in a way that they want to know more about me rather than feeling insulted. So that's probably why I don't feel insulted at all at any point of time. So my experiences throughout this, I've been in Nottingham for almost 10 years now, has been good actually. There's probably one or two odd occasions where the way people ask has been in an insulting manner just because of the tone they ask things, but it's never been an issue generally throughout my stay here.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think something that you said in there, which is about one or two odd things, but I think those also shouldn't happen, isn't it? And I think it is some of those microaggressions which sometimes become cumulative, and so if those odd occasions are happening, it's, I think, again, all of us to try to educate, try to raise awareness. It's as much incumbent upon the individual as well to find out more, and we will get it wrong. I think while we are trying to go through this storming stage, we will get it wrong. We will get asked questions, perhaps like, why is your English so good? Or did you have education in English? Or, but I think those questions can be asked with respect and mutual respect. I'm learning more about you. And even if, you said there was a Hindu in your family, you may not know all the Hindu traditions, and I don't know all the other traditions that you have. So there's something to learn a bit more about each other. But thank you for sharing that. And I have lots more questions of my own, but I want to open it up to the floor to see if people want to ask questions. We did make sure that the event was until 8:15 so that we had time for questions, and we're going to collect feedback as well. So if I can bring Dr. Om Sharma in, I know he had certainly a question that he wanted to ask. And then if anybody does wish to come in, please just raise your hand or feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. Dr. Sharma?
Thank you, Sonali. The question really I wanted to ask is to Irfan. He mentioned that he belongs to Ahmadiyya community and goes to Ahmadiyya mosque. I'm really not fully clear what's the difference between Ahmadiyya, Shia, or Sunni, and what are these differences are within the Islam. So if you could briefly tell us how we can differentiate, or should we differentiate, or address each other bit differently. So can you explain slightly bit more, please? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's a very good question, because when we see MPs or other people talk of British Muslims, they put us all in the same pot. They're all one. But actually, like other mainstream religions, Islam has over 70 sects in them. So most people know the Sunni and the Shia sects, which are the larger ones, but there are numerous smaller sects. And one of them is the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, is one of the smaller sects. And we have about 30,000 people in our communities in the whole of the UK. But we started off from a small village in Punjab, which is on the Indian side in Qadian. And this sect has spread throughout the world, really. And we're really into interfaith work and charity work. And our motto is love for all, hatred for none. The differences are ideological differences. So the main beliefs of Islam are the same for all of the Muslims, but there can be smaller ideological differences, which can cause a little bit of tension between the different sects as well. And so Islam is no different to Christianity and Sikhism and Judaism as well, in that it has different branches in. Thank you.
Thank you, Irfan. That was very helpful. Does that help to answer?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
Brilliant. Does anyone else have any questions from the floor to any of our panelists, or any reflections for that matter, or any comments? James, I can't see very clearly if anyone has unmuted or have their hands up. And it's good to see Mrs. Sharma here as well. Hope you're doing well, Mrs. Sharma. You're on mute, so we can't hear you.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah.
She's just joining us. Okay.
Good evening, Mrs. Sharma. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Thank you.
So I was just asking if anyone else has any questions from the floor. And while people are still thinking of reflections or questions, Rafia, I wonder if I can ask you a question, that if at any time have you felt excluded in any socio-cultural professional sphere as a result of your faith and beliefs, and how have you overcome it?
Yes. Majority of it is probably due to me not drinking alcohol and not wanting to go to places where they kind of sell and supply alcohol. So I think that's a major issue, and I think just the general culture of this country, and that's fine, but the general culture tends to be that, you know, the meetings get done down the pub. I started my career as a hospital pharmacist, actually, and it was quite difficult because a lot of the times all the pharmacists would kind of get together and go across to the pub, and a lot of the time they wouldn't understand why I wouldn't go, and it would kind of make me seem a little bit antisocial. And I'm not antisocial. It's just not something that I would do. I mean, if they went to a Starbucks, I'd be there. That's fine. But I think that's probably the most difficult thing to navigate. And I think, again, it's a kind of it's education at the end of the day. I mean, if they knew and if they were aware that that's not something that I would be able to do or I'd be comfortable with, then obviously they would seek another venue. But I think that's the biggest issue, definitely for me. And things like Christmas parties, and, you know, although I go to Christmas parties, I'm fine with it. It's quite difficult to navigate when a lot of people are drinking, and when you're not drinking, to kind of navigate that. And it's a bit strange to be a sober among so many drunk people, if I'm honest.
Yes, I think you're right, and I wonder if anyone else had any reflections on that, because that is I was talking to one of my colleagues the other day, and similarly, like you said, you know, it's with regards to alcohol, and I think one of the answers that was given back to them, oh, there will be non-alcoholic drinks there though, and I think that's the common response that perhaps people receive. And you're right, it is about trying to navigate that it's not just not drinking, it's where it's being served, isn't it? And that may be a challenge. So something probably for all of us to reflect on as to, you may or may not be celebrating Christmas this year, and certainly we won't be having those Christmas parties this year, the work-related Christmas parties. But how do we make sure that we don't leave anyone behind and really include everyone in those celebrations going into next year? Just seeing that, yeah, so I think Suki has mentioned as well, just to be mindful of the whole issue of alcohol, especially at Christmas parties, as you just said that. And Helen has mentioned something here. So it's perhaps an open question, if I can put it to anybody on the panel. It says there are often low number of people from diverse ethnic background and different faiths as patient leaders or sharing their lived experience stories. Are there cultural barriers, and how can those in my role encourage and empower others to join? Anybody would like to take that question in the panel? Irfan?
Yeah, I could have a go. About 18 months ago, we did a NUH roadshow at our mosque. So it's in Sneinton, it's very inner city. And the population is often called like hard to reach population because of deprivation or ethnic minority or for whatever reason. But actually the NUH and the nursing, they had lots of stalls there. They made a big effort to come into the community and reach out to the community. So sometimes when populations are labeled hard to reach, if people actually make contact with them and communicate, they will get a response.
Yeah, I think you're right, Irfan. And I think multiple times I have, so Aiysha has just said that she wants to, and I will just add, I think hard to reach is when we are expecting them to reach out to what is within our workplace, I think it's about just turning it on its head and going out to their community there, whether it's a mosque, it's a gurdwara, or it could be even where the children's nursery is, and really reaching out to people in their own setting rather than trying to do it the other way around. Aiysha, you wanted to come in?
I was just going to say, I've just literally had this conversation with Dr. Habib Naqvi on the podcast I recorded with him, and we covered this, and we found that there's this lack of trust, because people from ethnic backgrounds, people are Muslim, they're Sikh, Hindu, they've been judged over the years, and people assume that, yeah, like Dr. Malik said, this assumed to be difficult, but it's more that nobody's tried to go out and reach out to them. We keep putting information out to do with COVID or heart diseases, but it's taken so long for this information to be translated to languages that these minorities may understand, or putting it to places that they may actually see it. So at the local mosques, we had so many doctors who were doing videos in different languages during COVID to explain the lockdown restrictions, and people won't come forward, from whether they're healthcare professionals, whether they're patients, until they don't feel there's trust there. And I guess that's where we can move forward and reach out to them and adapt to them, rather than expecting patients and people to adapt to us.
Absolutely. And I think, and we will have to make sure that we have this engagement when we have the COVID vaccination program that comes out, to ensure that we engage with our population and get them on board. So Lawrence makes, thanks for that, Aiysha, that was really helpful. Lawrence makes a comment that even as a non-Muslim teetotaler, he can also find that strange and sometimes exclusive and excluding people, isn't it? So just a thought for whenever we are next, organizing our social events, to be more inclusive rather than exclusive. Ibrahim has asked a question: Is it halal to participate in Christmas celebration? Sorry, Ibrahim, do you want to come in with your question? I'm not sure if I've got your question correctly. Ibrahim, did you want to ask your question? Have your audio on?
So I want to ask my question, yes.
Please go ahead.
My question is it halal for a Muslim to participate in Christmas celebration?
Would anyone know the answer to that?
I think it's guidance, isn't it, Sonali? So for me, it would be yes. It would be. I love Christmas, and I don't drink, and I love Christmas. I'm always a designated taxi person, but I turn it into a positive, and everybody's, yay, Robana's coming. But for me, that would be a yes. I think if you were to ask members of my family, extended family, they would say it's not. So I think it's a cultural thing, more for me personally, more than anything else.
Thank you. Did anyone else? Thanks, Robana. That's really helpful. Did anybody else want to come in with any opinion? Rafia, I saw you on unmute.
Can I just say, I think it's more of a interpretation of your own religion. I mean, same with, you find it in Christianity, you found it in, in Sikhism and Hinduism. Everyone interprets their religion slightly differently. And I think you need to do what you feel is best. For me personally, I don't celebrate Christmas in the traditional sense. I don't give presents. I don't put up a tree. I don't do any of that. However, I do make a really nice roast with all the trimmings. And we get together as a family, because that's the time though a majority of our family are off, and they tend to get a day off. And that's the one time that we can all get together. So in the sense, I think it depends. And I mean, I have some friends who wouldn't even do that. They would say, no, it's completely impermissible to do that. But again, it's up to you and your interpretation of your religion. At the end of the day, it's your journey and it's your religion, it's your belief. So you do what's right for you. And I think the issue is if someone does say, oh, I don't celebrate Christmas, then it's not a negative thing. Or if someone says, I know a lot of people who like Robana, you do celebrate Christmas, and then you'll have some Muslims who'll be like, oh, well, you're not really a Muslim if you celebrate Christmas, you're a Christian. That's not really how it works. Like I say, it's open to interpretation, and you do what you need to do, really.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rafia. That's quite helpful. Helen's just given, someone's on unmute. So if they're not, if you're not speaking, if you can kindly put yourself on mute, please. Thank you. So Helen, I think, sorry, Helen, I think we may have got your question wrong. I think you were talking more about the volunteers who you said look more like you and how we can get more volunteers from the diverse ethnic background.
Yeah, that's right, Sonali. Obviously, I go into lots of places, and as you know, with my background, I don't tend to see, I don't like the term hard to reach, I'll be honest. But there are still an awful lot of middle class white men and white women in, you know, patient rep roles, and I lack understanding as to whether there are some cultural barriers. So Robana very clearly said earlier on, you know, when she said she was going to become a nurse, that a family member made the reflection, well, you can't do that, you're going to work with men. Are there other such barriers so that people like me can find ways of working with people in a different way to make sure that we can put their minds at rest? Because otherwise, as a patient leader, I can only represent from my lived experience, but lived experience isn't white middle class British.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, what you're saying. Would anyone want to come in? I mean, I have a view, but I'd want to see if the panelists wish to come in to answer that question. Open to anyone in the panel.
I think I'm going to sound really controversial here, and this is just my lived experience, but when you ask people to volunteer in these roles, a lot of them come from very deprived areas and communities, and they're working their socks off just to keep a roof over their head. So actually volunteering is really, really tricky. And I think for a lot of them, they don't see the benefits of doing that, even though we do. So they're not in our space and we're not in their space. And I think that's somewhere maybe to start. And you will get that with all communities and all backgrounds. If you're from a deprived area and you're busy working, trying to put a roof over your head, or you're always at the job centre, it's not on your radar. It doesn't interest you. It's for somebody else, somebody who's probably more educated. They probably feel a bit intimidated as well. And thinking, oh no, I can't do that. You know, you need to have degrees and you need to be a doctor to do that. And it's that is their thinking from hearing and sort of talking to our population from deprived areas from a BME background. So there is that as well. So I think it should be
I would concur with you on that, Robana. And I think I would also add to that, Helen, and that's based on some on the research that was done by, I think, Nottingham City Council, which was perhaps to do with leadership. And they feel that if the leadership doesn't look like them, then perhaps they won't feel encouraged to join in a volunteering role. So I think the pay gap is certainly one of the things that contributes to it. 2 could be lack of trust. And I think 3, the ethnic distribution perhaps of leadership. Did anybody else have any comments? Or Helen, did you have anything to say on that?
Just a huge thank you. That broadens my awareness and allows me to go forward and look at things in a different way. So thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, I would certainly add to that. So Chitra has been doing amazing work, isn't it? Just like you have, you know, a huge amount of, you know, awareness raising that you do, absolutely. And I'm aware that Chitra has been involved as well in doing lots of work around digital. So all of you are doing brilliant and keep up the good work. So there was another question from the Training Hub host, and again, open to the panelists. How have you found it practicing your faith during this time of the lockdown and the pandemic? Particularly, how have you managed to maintain your sense of community when it seems that so much of Islam centers around community and togetherness? So anyone would like to? Aiysha, would you like to take that question, or Nadiah?
I think for me, during the lockdown, we had the little break between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. And that little break is when I've catch up with all my Muslim friends, actually. So we did a gathering at one of the large park with social distancing at the time. It was very early stage of the opening of the lockdown, and there were police everywhere and things. But it's difficult that you, during the lockdown itself, it's difficult in a way that you can't do gathering as much. And if your birthday falls during that lockdown itself, you can't really celebrate much. But we did do a Zoom sort of like eat together for one of our friends' birthday, and also again Zoom during Eid as well, because that falls during lockdown as well. So I think there are means to gather around, but it's slightly different, but you tend to adapt with changes, don't you? Especially even in training, when you're changing rotation every 4 months or every few months, you just learn to adapt. So I think it was difficult at the start, but over time, it seems like the norm. That's from my experience.
Thank you, Nadia. That was really helpful. And I think I'd probably just ask a last question on Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, as you raised a question as well. And how do the panel find fasting, especially as it falls, did you say in the summer months? And do you feel that this kind of spiritual month has an impact on your work? And again, how can the work be a bit more culturally sensitive to you during this Ramadan month? Have they been, and how can they improve? So probably a lot in that question that is there. But again, open to anyone on the panel that wants to take this up, to just get, how does, during the month of Ramadan, how does it impact you in your work? And then how do you think the workplace can be a bit more culturally sensitive?
It's my favorite month. I feel like it actually goes quicker than most months. And I know we're fasting and we're not eating or drinking, and summer was such long days, but Ramadan's all about patience and tolerance, and you just appreciate things more. And in our fields, we're looking after people. So what more can we do that's better represents our religion on what the month of Ramadan's supposed to be? So yeah, I genuinely just always feel happy throughout Ramadan. And I don't think that's the best way to explain it. With work-related stuff, I've had varied experiences. Some places have been wonderful, and they'll make sure you still take your lunch break because you need to have a rest, or they'll check if you've been to pray or you've gone to have a sit down. And when I used to do during my pre-reg, if I was on for a late night, they'd ask, do you want to go and eat? Are you sure you want to just go? Do you want to finish early? There was a lot of respect and understanding. Whereas if I look back to my first ever job, that was never there. It was more of a, well, even for example, for either Ramadan, well, you're rotated onto work, so you need to be working. And I think as times have gone along, things have advanced, and I'm seeing that a lot. I've never done a Ramadan with PICS because I only started in July, but my first Eid with PICS was July, 3 weeks after I started. And I was so hesitant to take Eid off because of the experiences I've had in the past. But I ended up biting the bullet and asked for leave about 48 hours before, and they gave me the day off, and they didn't hesitate once. So I'm looking forward to Ramadan with PICS.
Oh, brilliant, Aiysha. That is on such a positive note. And that was actually full of positivity in terms of, because I think just like you said, it's about tolerance, it's about patience in the holy month of Ramadan, and how that spills over then into your personal and professional life. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was absolutely beautiful, and I've learned so much more. If I can ask all of you to fill in the feedbacks, if I pass over to James, who's now put the link of the feedback in the chat. So if you go to menti.com and address, what's the code, James? Sorry, I can't.
The code, it's a slightly different one. I've put the link in the chat as well. Okay. You can also go 23 45 31 5. But you can click on the link that I've put up there, or you can go to that.
Do you want to just repeat that, James, the code?
Yeah, no worries. It's menti.com and 23 45 31 5. I'm also going to pop a link to last month's event as well that you can watch back on YouTube, which is really excellent. And keep your eyes peeled for more of these, which will be going up on the Training Hub website, and will be going out via our usual channels as well. It's been a real privilege to have this. Thank you so much, Sonali and panel.
Thank you, James. And I'm going to end. So while people are filling up the feedback form, and please do that, we do want to continue month on month. I want to do something on Disability Awareness Month. So if you wish to either have a Q&A session with me or even just write 3 or 4, I'm happy to send the questions across to you, just so that we start to raise awareness of those amongst us who may have an obvious disability that is immediately obvious, but the ones that aren't and that are hidden, and they may be having difficulty speaking about this, how we can really start to include people, being comfortable with the uncomfortable, as it said, and to make sure that we take people along. Julie, you said about you're interested to visit different places of worship. Please get in touch with me. I will put my email address in the chat box. Get in touch with me and I will absolutely make some connections there. And Irfan's written his email already. So thanks, Irfan, for doing that. And I'm going to end on the words by a very famous poet called as Rumi, who is a 13th century Persian poet, Islamic scholar, and a Sufi mystic. And I'm going to read a few lines from his poem. And it says, "You were born with potential. You were born with goodness and trust. You were born with ideals and dreams. You were born with greatness. You were born with wings. You were not meant for crawling, so don't. You have wings. Learn to use them and fly." So wishing all of you, for those of you who may be celebrating or not celebrating, a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and Hogmanay. Guru Purab has just gone on Monday. So for all of the Sikhs who celebrated that, I hope you had a good time with friends and family. Stay safe, look after yourself and look after those around you. Going to be, as James has said, the recording of this event will be on Training Hub. I'll send the link across for that. And if anyone has any ideas, wants to be part of the planning events, please just feel free to drop me an email. We're setting up a racial equity and diversity group, and there will be an advert out soon for a clinical lead and non-clinical lead. So again, if you're interested, feel free to get in touch. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening and hope to see you all soon.